Wadi al-Maleh is a village in Israel. It is in Area C, an area of the West Bank controlled entirely by Israel. But up until just this last week, it was just Palestinians were living there. That is no longer the case. They have been evicted by the military. It is now being converted into a military firing range and training ground. Now, the military says it already was in a firing range and training ground, but people had been living in it up until recently. Those people have now been moved out. We've seen this happen over the last couple of years. It happens quite frequently. Areas are bulldozed either to make way for Jewish settlers or for military practices, and then possibly later on for Jewish settlers. And so that happened. Back in January, there was another village that was cleared out. Now, the residents did come back just 2 days later, but by the time they got back, over 90 buildings had been demolished. Now, look, Israel is not a particularly large country, and it does need room to practice military maneuvers, tank coordination, and things like that. I don't doubt that. But I think it's interesting to note that, let me get the exact number, 18% of the West Bank is currently designated as a firing range for the Israeli military. Now, it's hard to picture exactly what 18% is, how much that is, but I can tell you how significant it is. It is the same size as Area A, the area of the West Bank controlled entirely by Palestinians. So the entire Palestinian people, firing ranges for the military. Are we surprised? I mean, I don't know what I expected. We've had a series of elections over the last decade there. We've seen attempts to moderate and to modernize the governance of the Palestinians, and yet still things like this happen. Now, I know that I have my own particular stance. I'm going to view these stories through a particular lens, and I always want to give the benefit of the doubt to the Israeli government because they're in an incredibly hard situation. But sometimes I feel like these moves are made simply to remind the populations in these areas that you are being controlled, you are being occupied. Don't imagine that you can develop these areas and hope for a better life 10, 20, 30 years down the line. If we want to come in, we will come in. We will destroy your buildings. By the way, not just the structures are blown up. Wells have been destroyed. Walls have been destroyed. I hope that they got good firing practice out of it, I suppose, if these people's buildings had to be destroyed, but it seems pretty malicious, it seems pretty unnecessary. And we're trying right now, by the way, both in Israel and efforts by the US to rekindle the peace process. But things like this continue to happen. The military says that they have the right to do this, but I think that the people living there have a right to some sort of stability. Perhaps in the next few years we can make some headway on the peace process, maybe move these people back into these areas, or at least secure more areas where they know in 1 month, in 6 months, in a year, this will not simply be an area to be trampled by Israeli tanks.